Welcome to Railfans. I'm Shane Sege. Join us as we discover the Ottawa O-Train, Toronto Subway, and Montreal Metro systems together. I'm Shane Sege, and joining me today is Troy Charter, Director of Transit Operations. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
So today I'd like to talk about service interruptions, service disruptions, and how there's multiple factors that come into play for those kind of events to occur. So I'd like to start off with, we're now approaching the summer. We've had some hot days. Summer operations can be challenging due to, the heat from the sun, from lightning, wind, all sorts of meteorological events. So can you talk a bit about summer operations? What kind of challenges does a rail operation like the O-Train face, and how do you deal with them?
Okay, yeah. In each season, you deal with different things, and the summer poses different challenges than the winter, obviously. One of the biggest challenges that all railroads deal with, and that's the important piece to note here is that we're not unique in this regard. All rail properties have to manage, the weather conditions, and we're not unique in that regard. So when it comes to summer, one of the biggest challenges is the heat and the sun, and it's that impact on the rails. Those rails are made of steel, and in times of heat, that rail can expand and grow a bit, and then in the wintertime it can contract, right? So in the summertime, when we have those temperatures of 30 degrees and more, we have to pay special attention to the track. Our maintainer, RTG, they have to do extra inspections, and it's part of their responsibilities in the regiment, essentially, in terms of maintaining the track. And then we may have to implement slow orders. Those slow down trains at certain portions of the track until such time as the temperature drops in the evening and things stabilize. And it's all about the safe movement of trains. So when you have those hot days and there is a potential, you've heard the term sun kinks. There's a potential for sun kinks. We do extra inspections, and we may implement. When it's over 30 degrees, we implement slow orders just to slow down the trains. Most areas, the difference is about 5-10 kilometers an hour. Some sections it's a little bit more than that, where the trains get up to higher speeds. But that's the biggest piece. Obviously, there's more things that you'd look at. Going into the summer months, we have programs to check the HVAC and the air conditioning. There's different settings that we'd put in place for both the operator cab as well as the customer cab. But it's the biggest piece is the sun and the heat and its impact on track, and the things we do to keep service going safely and reliably in those conditions.
So just as an overview, what are sun kinks for those who are not familiar with that term?
So a sun kink is essentially, it's a wavy part of the track. What happens is in those really hot days, especially when it's sunny, those steel rails can expand, and they can expand to a certain degree, and when it gets extreme, this expansion, there's nowhere for the rail to go other than out, and so that can create a kink. Typically, what you would see, and we've seen it here, is not necessarily a kink, but a little bit of a wave in the track, and customers may experience in a little bit of a bit more swaying in the train than what they'd normally see. So it really just comes down to it. It's about the steel track and how it expands, and that metal needs to go somewhere. So that's why you do those extra inspections, and that's why you put those slow orders in place, because it's all about making sure that the trains can keep going safely and reliably.
Now, moving to the winter season, obviously similar things happen. You can have icy track and rail, cold, snow. You've also implemented what we've seen in social media, sometimes type 1, type 2 braking and all that. So can you talk a bit about the summer operations and how that all plays out? The winter operations. Winter operations,
sure. Yeah. So conversely, winter, different season, different way to manage it, right? So in the winter, the steel on the tracks can contract, and so when you have those prolonged periods of cold weather, once again, we do extra inspections. we're checking the track, and you have to watch for what they call track breaks. And we had one last year, a very small one. They do happen on all railroads, but the best way that the organizations manage both the summer and the winter on the track side of things is installing the rail at what they call a rail neutral temperature. So you install it at a temperature so that it can expand a bit in the summer before it starts to create waves or kinks, and as well it can contract a bit in the winter before it starts to crack or maybe before it starts to have a little break. And if there is going to be a break, you want it to be a little break, and that's all comes down to it's an engineering process in which you install it at a certain temperature. But the wintertime, for us, what the biggest advantage for us on winter is the fact that our trains is 100% grade separated from everything. We don't interact with pedestrian pathways. We don't interact with pedestrians, cars, traffic lights. So our system is not susceptible to a lot of the delays that you'd see in wintertime with regards to the snow accumulation, the ice. So we have that reliability factor to it. But when we are having snowstorms or ice storms, we would potentially implement type 1 or type 2 braking, which is essentially different brake profiles and different brake and acceleration profiles. So when you're experiencing a snowfall and it's accumulating a bit, we might go to a type 1 brake rate, which the trains will they'll slow down. As they're coming into the station, they'll slow down a little bit farther out than the station, and they'll come into the station slower. And that's about ensuring that it'll stop at the right location. And then conversely, on acceleration, it would accelerate a little slower out of the station. Those are things to, it's prevent, as I said, to make sure it stops at the right location. You want to prevent slip slides of the wheels on the track, those types of things. So we do a little bit more of that in the winter. We can do that in the summer when you're experiencing maybe a heavy rainfall, and there might be some, wheel track slippage, and our trains are outfitted with devices that will detect that and would notify our control center, and then that's how our control center knows how to make those adjustments. They get that real-time information, and if they experience I say slip slide, it's just say as the train's accelerating out, the wheel just spins a little bit before it gains traction. Well, if they see a lot of that, then they would implement maybe type 1 or type 2 braking at that point.
And that's all controlled from your control center?
Correct. Yep. They could implement it all to all the trains. And another advantage of having operators on our trains, another set of eyes and ears. And if they're experiencing anything, they report it into the control center, and then the control center can either look at things, look at the data that they're getting from the trains, or they can just make a call right then and there based on the information to make some adjustments.
When a service interruption does happen, let's say there's maintenance that's required on the track, or there's a disabled train or whatnot, multiple ways that has been dealt with from observation is single tracking or having a shuttle train. So let's say there's a stuck train from St. Laurent to Blair. You'll run a train just going back and forth there. Someone will have to switch. So can you speak a little bit about these different methods that you use to mitigate a full-on service interruption, and how they're done and how effective they are? Sure.
Yeah. I mean, whenever we have to implement an alternate service plan, whether it's single tracking or a shuttle service, the driving factor, the driving decision point is what's the best way to provide safe and reliable service to our customers during that incident or that event. So we're always looking what's the least impactful way to keep service moving, and sometimes it depends. It's dependent on time of day, ridership, as well as location. Right? We do have 7 locations where trains can cross from one track to another, but some of the segments in which you would be single tracking might be longer than others, therefore more impactful. So between Herdman Station and Rideau Station, that's one of our longer sections where if we needed to single track around it, you could create some delays for these other trains. So there's a variety of things that we factor in, but really at the end of the day, the decision is about what's the best way to best way to provide the best service for our customers when faced with something. So the single tracking can be very effective. It's our preferred option, to keep service going. But At other times, though, we want to do that shuttle where, for example, we'd have 10 trains running between Saint Laurent and Funny's Pasture. And then because there may be some track work on one of the tracks between Saint Laurent and Blair, we would single track there. We could only operate on single track. What we might want to do there is run the 10 trains on what we call a loop, and then have one train doing a shuttle back and forth. So all customers have to transfer trains at Saint Laurent. It's easy and consistent to message, and we tend to do that because it allows the other the other part of the system to run really reliably without delays. So only the customers traveling east of Saint Laurent would have to transfer trains. But we are always looking at what's the best way to do it, and as I said, the factors, time of day, location, and and the ridership. I mean, there's certain options that we can do with low ridership that work, but when you have high ridership, if you want to keep up with the volume, in non-COVID times, we might be looking at doing a combination of rail and bus, running a shuttle train and R1 bus service to be able to keep up with the volume. But those are decisions that are made based upon the circumstances that are present at the time.
Sometimes when there are interruptions, we'll see interesting messaging going out from social media or from the email burst, like premature braking. There's some others as well. So can you just give us a little rundown on a couple of these different terminology that is being used and what they mean?
Yeah, sure. Sorry to cut you off there. Yeah, when it comes to communicating out the impacts, primarily what our customers want to know: how does it impact me? Right. That's got to be our priority. Longer travel times, transferring trains, R1 bus service. Customers need to know first and foremost, what does that mean to my commute? And that's the most important piece. The reason for the delay or the disruption or the work going on, we want to try to relay that information, but it's not, and I'm not trying to minimize it, but it's just not as important to that user. The reason why, they just want to know, how do I get from point A to point B, and how to, and am I going to be late or not? So some of the terminology that we use is it's evolved a little bit. We're trying to find the best way to communicate in the shortest possible way, right? With Twitter and alerts, you're limited in the number of characters and that type of thing. So, but we try to keep it short and sweet. So, stop train, immobilized train. Basically, we have a train that for one reason or another is stopped at a station or stopped on the track and can't proceed. It could be because of a technical issue, track or vehicle. Sometimes, one of our frequent causes of short delays is medical emergencies on trains. We do see that. So we have to hold a train at a station until such time as emergency response personnel attend. If we can get the customer off the train in the station, we keep service going again. But that's one of the common ones that we do see. But stop train, immobilized train, track maintenance inspection. That's more of the terminology you'll see more frequently. But we are still evolving a little bit in our communication through alerts and Twitter. But our focus is always, what does it mean for the customer? But we're also trying to, as well, at the same time, educate and provide more information about the reasons for it. But that is really a secondary requirement in the alerts. So I try not to read too much into that short text, because as well, what we see is what we initially observe as maybe, say, a disruption, and it could be initially reported as a brake issue on a train. But when it comes back into the MSF, the maintenance and storage facility, and the technicians work on it, it actually wasn't a brake issue; it was actually something else. So that's why in a lot of the alerts we're not very specific, because what you see is not necessarily what you see might only be the symptom of the issue. But when it's things like proactive track work or track inspections, we try to be very factual in that regard.
Since the service opened almost 2 years ago now, we've seen LRVs being operated as coupled pairs from day one. One of the original plans was that in lower periods or on the weekends, we would have possibly seen single units operating. Do you ever see a possibility of that happening, or will they always, for the foreseeable future, operate as coupled pairs?
It is possible for sure. I mean, it was definitely, you're right. The original plan was single car trains on weekends. And I think you're right. I think it was off peak times. I know definitely weekends it was meant to be single car trains. But so it is possible. The trains are fully capable of operating individually. When we are going through the, when we receive new vehicles, because we are receiving stage 2 vehicles, when we receive those new vehicles and they have to go out for what we call the burn-in testing and commissioning, the final testing commissioning, we run it for many hours, many kilometers back and forth the line to make sure that when we put it into service, it's ready to go. We are running those as single car trains. Now we could also test and commission by coupling them, but we have generally been doing them as single car trains because we've been receiving them as single car trains. So it is possible, and it is something that could happen in the future. The reason why we went with the double car trains right now is it simplifies the day-to-day operations, right? New rail operation, a lot of new staff, and so let's just simplify the operation because, coupling and uncoupling trains every night in a yard, it's a lot of work. And we know that there was going to be a lot of challenges just with any new operation. So we said, let's simplify operations, pair them up and keep them paired up as much as you can. And RTG agreed that they would do that at no additional cost to the city because there was a benefit for them as well too. So it is possible for sure, and it is something that we may see in the future. Right now, we're happy with the 2-car trains, and it gives right now during COVID times, it gives ample space for people. And then when ridership starts to return back, once again we want to have those 2 cars. So it is possible in the future, but right now we're not considering it. But yeah, there's nothing stopping it from happening, in other words.
Now, another thing that we've observed in the past couple months, the articulated bellows between the modules of the LRVs, we've noticed that some of them have been fitted with ones that extend further out to the edge of the train, whereas it used to be inset. Can you tell us a little bit about this and why this is being done? What advantage is there to this kind of improvement?
So it was an outstanding modification that they're required to do for all the trains, and it's just without that additional modification, that portion of the train, I don't really know how to explain it right. Like I'm going to say indentation, but I'm trying to think of it, explain right. Like we want that side of the train to be as flush and flat as possible, right? And because your number one risk point in any railroad, your number one risk point is the platform where customers interact with the train, right? So we want it as flush as possible because it minimizes, as much as possible, the potential of someone being dragged by a train, or something getting stuck, something along the guideway, maybe becoming lodged in there, something like that. So it was an outstanding modification, and it's just an enhancement to all the other safety measures that we have in place, and that's why was a requirement to put in place. They're starting to do that now, and that's why you're seeing them on some of the trains that are there. We had to pilot and test a few, and then they're going to be going and retrofitting the rest of the fleet with that.
Another thing we've observed, and you can tell me if this is related to the warm weather and the sun kink possibility. Trains leaving from Lee's station, let's say going east towards Herdman, they're leaving the station and proceeding at a very, very slow pace. Is that related to temperature, or is that something else?
It is related to temperature, and it's related to the fact that the last couple transit commission meetings I've been talking about some significant track work that's coming up. There is track work that will be that's being planned. It's being finalized right now. It'll be rolling out sometime this month. And this track work is about essentially, grinding the rail, getting rid of some of the rail corrugation, so the bumpiness, which will improve the noise and the vibration, and will allow us to return to, will allow us to remove some of the temporary speed restrictions we have in certain places when we have high heat. So it is related to temperature, and it's definitely related to the track work that's coming up later this month. Yeah, those Herdman curves, those are the tightest curves on our alignment, and those are the areas in which we need to pay the most attention to. So, I'm glad you said it was heading east into the curves, because that is where we have, that's where we had challenges last summer, and that's where, as I said, we do have some temporary speed restrictions in place, because we know that the work is coming later this month to reset the rail, so to speak. Every year, we're going to be doing seasonal track work. The work that we're doing right now is going to be fairly extensive. It's going to be across the entire line. So this is more than just the seasonal stuff. So it's sort of like internally, I've been saying it's seasonal plus. It's robust, it's extensive, and it's the entire line. But I'm not. Every year you're going to see some work that's going to be done on the track in the wintertime, and then every summer you're going to see some work. We need to be doing seasonal work on the track. And I think I've mentioned once at the Transit Commission before that because people were asking, oh my God, there's people out working on the track. Is there something wrong? No, I mean, you want them out on the track. We want them out on the track every night. It's when they're not out, that's when you need to wonder, right? But every night we're doing work on the track, on the trains, and every change of season we need to be making adjustments and tweaks, whether it to be the train or the track or even the stations. And that's where we're at right now is all those proactive adjustments that you can do for the season. And with the track work coming up, that's going to be fairly extensive. And looking forward to seeing that the equipment that we have coming. It was in Vancouver several weeks ago. I came into Ontario. I'm not sure which property it was in Ontario, but it's going to be on its way to us in the next couple of days. And this is a significant piece of equipment. A lot of time and effort just to get it onto the tracks and get the work going. It's got a crew that travels with it, that run the train, run the grinding machinery, and then every night every day it's got another set of crew that get it ready for the next set of work that night. So it's going to be neat to see. It's going to be impressive.
This will probably also entail some closures and all that to give them better access to the rail line, I would assume, as well, right?
Correct. Yeah, and I mentioned at the Transit Commission that there will be some service adjustments associated with it. We'll be most likely, we're finalizing those plans now. We'll be announcing something probably next week on that regard, because it's going to come fast. And like we've said all along, trying to take a positive out of COVID. And please, I'm not trying to, minimize the impacts COVID's had on the worldwide economy and people and families, but we're trying to take some positives out of it. So we've said right from the beginning to council, to RTG, leverage this period of low ridership. You may never have this again. And, we have an opportunity to be able to do things that we wouldn't be able to do with high ridership, right? So let's leverage the time and do as much as we can. So this track work that's coming up is an example of that. We're doing the entire line. Ideally, we could just focus on certain key sections like Herdman, heading into Cedarville Station, some of those areas where there's some curves. But no, we're going to do the entire line and do it right. And once again, as I said, I'm repeating myself, but leverage this period of low ridership, leverage the COVID stuff, and we're getting to the end of it. Which, let's hope there's not, that the vaccines keep having the positive effect, and then we don't have to do any more lockdowns, and we can start to go back to a normal life for everyone. But we want to leverage the period of low ridership and do as much as we can.
Can you talk a bit about the speed that the trains operate on the Confederation Line? There's some sections where it seems to peak out around 79 kilometers per hour. There's some slower sections. With stage 2 being having a lot more straight sections, more distance between stations, will we see a higher speed than that?
Yeah, the trains are capable of going to a higher speed. I don't know the number, so I don't want to guess. But heading out to Trim, there's some straight stretches there where those trains can get up to some higher speeds. They're capable of higher speeds, and they can go higher. Right now, it's really just a function of the track and the configuration and how close the next station is. So the two faster sections, I believe Pimisi to Tunney's, and that's a fairly straight stretch where we get up to a good amount of speed. And then Cedarville out to Blair is another area.
I'd also like to talk a bit about the rectification plan. So there was still several items that were ongoing.
A bit of history. The rectification plan identified 7 major items that had impacted, that were contributing to the service impacts. Not saying it's not all the issues, but here's the 7 main ones, and they've been able to effectively resolve 5 of the 7. Okay, so switch heaters, switch functionality, but primarily switch heaters in the winter. Right. Overhead catenary system. We had, if you recall, we had the catenary pull down at one point. We had some catenary issues, but they did a lot of work on the OCS. Haven't seen a return of those issues. Vehicle traction power. 2 years ago, started the New Year's Eve, the arcing events. That's all been effectively resolved, and we haven't seen a return of that. Doors. Probably our most impactful and our most frequent service effect was on doors. They've gone through that safety certification process. The new door software has been in place as well. We've done modifications that, when a door does go out of alignment and doesn't shut properly, we've done some other modifications that allows our operators a greater ability to be able to isolate that door and keep the train in service. So doors and the HVAC, so the air conditioning and the heating. So those 5 items are the ones that have been effectively resolved. The 2 outstanding are with regards to braking, the brake units themselves, and it's more about fine tuning right now, as well as it's an acronym, and I don't know it's a French acronym, CVS units, and it has to do with how the power gets translated from the overhead catenary system into the train, and it gets transferred into usable power. But those 2 outstanding issues, the braking systems and CVS units, it's really all right now about fine tuning and getting that right optimal mix. For example, in the braking systems, there's a combination of electrical brakes and mechanical brakes, and it's finding that right mix between the 2. Right, if you find that trains are braking too abruptly, they make some adjustments and say let's give it more mechanical as opposed to less electrical. And we're doing that fine tuning. So those were the 7 major items that were in the rectification plan. All those items are going through a third party to validate that, yes, that is the correct fix, and 2, it is sustainable, and they have the right processes and policies and procedures in place to make sure this lasts. So we're going through all that process right now. In addition to the rectification plan, we did have the issue with the wheel cracks. So I'm splitting hairs a little bit. Major issue, but just it wasn't part of that formal rectification plan because that came after. So we've been talking about it at the Transit Commission. They've been doing daily inspections on all the train wheels, and as they've been doing these inspections, they've been replacing any wheel that either has a crack or has the potential for a crack to create because of they know what the factors that led to these cracks. The good news is we haven't seen another crack since, it was initially reported in July of last summer. I don't think we've seen another crack since at least, I think it was either August or early September. So we're close to a year in which we haven't seen another crack, which tells us, the inspection process is working. And they're about almost 80% done the entire fleet. So the goal is to finish that up this year. This summer, finish up this summer so that we could say, we've been using the term green wheel trains. All the trains have either new wheels or wheels that have been validated through the engineering process that they don't have the stress that can result in a crack. So they're about 80% done. They've got to finish up the last little bit. But you said inspections continue. We haven't seen a crack since August, September of last year. And and we've been able to maintain service as well too, which is great. So almost there.
We have a train tracker on our website. And we have a live stream and people out, riding the system and submitting their findings. We track, which train units, which LRVs were out on a given day. There's a couple of the earlier stage 1 trains. So, for example, 1106 that hasn't been seen in practically over a year now.
So Shane, LRV6, that's one of the trains that we've been using as a troubleshooting train. So, with this as well with this period of low ridership, we've had the ability to do some things that we wouldn't necessarily be able to do when we have to use the entire fleet. So once again, it's another example of how we're leveraging this period of low ridership. So they're using this train to trial some things with regards to some of the software updates, or they're also using this train as well to test some of the variables that they see with some of the problems. So we, if you recall, at one point we reported that there was some concerns, or not concerns, but there was some service failures that may have been attributed to the change in coupler status, where the two trains are connected. What we found out was there was no issue with the connection. The trains were connected, but there was a couple pins that were faulty that were sending an error message to the operator saying, hey, there's a problem with your coupler. Everything was fine, but there was that message that was getting to the operator. So we've used that LRV6 to troubleshoot and to look at, okay, is it just these two specific pins, or there are other connection pieces to it? So it's more of a troubleshooting train. So there's not a problem with it, but we had the luxury of not having to use it. So let's use that as a way to try to expedite how we, some of the other modifications, some of the fixes we wanted to trial before we put it into revenue service. So yeah, LRV6, I think it's been, I see it here as, we've been, since January, essentially, we've been using it that way.
Okay. Well, thanks for the information.
No worries. What comes September, when, we're planning to go back up to 15 and 13 trains, 15 in the AM, 13 in the PM. That's when I think you'll start to see some of these trains that have been out for a while. The other thing to factor in too as well, and that's not specific to 6, but sometimes you won't see some trains for a little while as well, because we started our fleet largely at the same time. And, that means 10K inspections all come at the same time. Those are quick. 30K inspections, fairly quick, 50K. But it's when you get into those 200,000 kilometer inspections where we're at now, those are very significant inspections. They take days. You have an entire fleet coming due roughly around the same time, right? So RTG is also using this time to hold trains, to save some kilometers, to spread it out. You don't want to have to do all 34 trains or whatever. Right now it's 34 for stage 1, but you don't want to have to do all your 200K inspections at the same time. You want to have them spaced out. So we're also using this period of time to space things out a bit too.
Now, can you talk a bit, stage 2, the trains are still being assembled in Ottawa at the MSF, but they're also being assembled outside of Toronto, I believe in Brampton?
Correct, Brampton, yeah.
What portion of them are still being done here, and how many are pending over there?
Just the vehicles that had been started here. So we're just finishing up. I think it was a handful of vehicles, 5, 6, 7 vehicles, something like that were here, that were started here. The remainder of the fleet is all going to be done in Brampton and brought here. It gives us some advantages. One, it allowed them here locally just to focus on service. That's got to be our priorities on service. Less vehicles moving around the yard, less train moves, simplifies the operations. They have a facility close by. Brampton's not that far. It's a quick, 5-6 hour car ride to bring the trains down. So leverage that facility and allow this facility to focus on service, which needs to be our number one priority. So just finishing off the remainder ones. I just saw we had a train. I don't know what train number it is, but I just saw a train delivered yesterday from Brampton on the float they were bringing into the shop. So, but they were just finishing off the ones that were here.
Yeah, incidentally, we actually saw people online posting pictures of that train. I think it was spotted at the Arnprior truck stop, and there's some pictures on Twitter that we shared on, or somebody shared on Flickr.
It's neat to see. I saw it just on the road here on Belfast, and I was wow. And I deal with the trains every day, and I still like seeing them when they arrive. And I'd love to see one not like out on the highway or at the Antrim truck stop or something. That would be neat to see. All deckled up with Ottawa and stuff like that. That'd be very cool.
Now, another thing I want to talk about, when a train does get disabled or is immobilized on the track, and you have to bring it back to the maintenance and storage facility, how is that usually accomplished?
Most times, it's driven back. And there's a variety of ways we can drive it back, right? Number one, if you can drive it back under CPTC control, that's our number one option. Secondly, we can drive it back in which the operator is manually driving the train, but you still have all the CPTC protections in place to ensure, the safe movement of the vehicle. You can do that. And then in very limited circumstances, the operator manually drives the train in and, at slow speeds and that sort of stuff, stopping at stations at slow speeds. Most times, we're driving the train back. There have been some situations where, you hook up another train and you either tow or push it back. And we've done that a few times. We actually practice that. We want to find more opportunities to continue to do that because it's not a quick process. But the quicker we can get at it, the quicker we can minimize disruptions and get service going again normally. But vast majority of the times they're driven off. A technician has to attend the train, reset a fault code or something like that, just to be able to get it off the line. But as I said, there's been those occasional times where we've done a tow or a push, that's a real long train. Literally four trains in length. We've done that. I think we did that once or twice, and that's a really long train when you do it. It's impressive to see.
4 trains long. That's almost 200 meters, give or take. So it's quite something.
Yeah, but the vast majority of the time we're driving it off. As I said. But a technician has had to come. Like our operators can troubleshoot a lot on those trains and get it moving again. But there's certain things that they're just not. If you're getting into the electrical components, they're just not trained to deal with some of the things that can happen. And you need a tech to be able to plug in their laptop and troubleshoot. Our initial reaction is we got a list of things. Here's what our operators can troubleshoot and do. So as the tech is coming, our operators are trying to do those things. And if they can get the train moving, great, cancel the tech, but get the tech moving as we're trying to troubleshoot. Once again, it's all about procedures to try to minimize the impact and keep service going as best possible.
So we've already talked about the articulated bellows being improved upon. We've also noticed on the inside of the train by the doors, the door mechanisms, the hydraulics that pull and close the doors. There's now like a white bezel or some sort of cover that covers a lot of that equipment. Is there any other things noticeable by people that they might want to keep an eye on as they get replaced that are in the works at this point?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head, Shane, but it's not to say there's not. I know on the door piece that was twofold. One, we did experience some of the our operators can go in there to try to isolate a door on the side, and then there's mechanisms up top as well. We did see that sometimes with some of the vibration on the train that latching mechanism was dropping down. So they made some improvements to hold that better in place. But as well, that was also linked to the adjustments that were made to give our operators that greater ability to isolate a door, taking it out of service, but keep the train in service. The bellows are another one. I'm just trying to go through my head, station or track or anything like that. We will be installing as a bit of a pilot, or RTG will be installing as a pilot, a wayside track lubricator near Herdman Station. Tight curves and Herdman Station, those curves are going to always require some, on any railroad, curves require more attention than straight track. And those are tight curves, so the tighter the curve, the more you need to inspect them and maintain them and look at them. So the track work, the grinding that's coming up is going to help reduce the noise and vibration. We're going to be looking at what's the optimal wheel rail interface, that profile. The train wheel sits on the track, and there's an optimal curve that you have in the wheel that's touching, and there's an optimal curve on the track that you want to have as well. So we're going to be fine tuning that over the years. But one of the other things we looked at is, if you install a wayside track lubricator, basically a greaser, that'll help reduce the noise, help reduce the friction and the wear and tear on both the wheels and the track. So that's one of the things that we're going to be installing with this upcoming shutdown. And if it works effectively, we'll probably do it at other locations. They currently have one in the yard that's been working really well, so we want to try it on the main line as well. Aside from that, I can't think of anything right now off the top of my head, but maybe that might be a follow-up question you need to have, and I can get some. I can do some research on that one, but I can't think of anything right now. We're going to be doing some other things from time to time. We're going to be, we're going to, standard stuff though. But we're going to look at fencing. We got fencing along the entire line. Maybe there's some areas in which we want to, put some additional fencing and fortify it even more to keep trespassers out. Those types of things. But I can't think of anything like really truly public facing in a vehicle that they would notice and that they'd want to be familiar with. I mean, our safety systems aren't changing. Our emergency telephones on the train or on the stations, that's all standard. That's not going to change. So I can't think of anything right now off the top of my head. Yeah, no, nothing that's public facing. There's some other adjustments with regards to passenger counting systems and that type of stuff that gives us better stats and metrics. But you wouldn't see that. It would just if there was formal inquiries, we'd just have maybe more meaningful stats that we could provide, so to speak.
Now, coming back earlier on, we were talking about service disruptions, interruptions, how you mitigate those, how you deal with those, the single tracking and whatnot. I just want to draw a comparison to Montreal's Metro. Now, for people that follow their Twitter accounts, they have Twitter accounts for, the blue line, green line, orange line, and yellow line. There are daily interruptions or impacts that happen. That's a system that's been around since the mid 60s. So it's over 50 years old now. They know their stuff. They run a really tight ship over there, but stuff still happens. And Mr. Manconi, your general manager, has even said, nothing's ever going to be perfect. This is a rail operation. This is by nature how it is. Stuff, you try your best, but things happen, and we can look at Toronto, we can look at Montreal. But the comparison I want to make is that we can often see in Montreal, they don't always elaborate too much on what the incident is, but an interruption from Honoré Beaugrand all the way to Angrignon, that's the whole line that's being interrupted for a certain amount of time. I mean, I find that OC Transpo thus far has done a really good job at mitigating the impact of the whole line. I mean, yes, R1 does happen. It doesn't happen to any frequency that it used to, but looking at it now, when we see the little tweet about you have to switch trains at Saint Laurent, you're still maintaining service. The impact in most cases is very small. So I just want to acknowledge that you're making good efforts on that to put the customer first in that sense, to minimize the impact to them, not putting them on buses and all that. So I think that's really important for people to acknowledge and to realize that nothing's ever going to be perfect. It's never going to be flawless. It isn't anywhere else. And to me at least, I find that I'm impressed with the response that you've been giving to those things.
Well, thank you for that, Shane. It's an important point because, I've looked at the Montreal stats and the TTC stats, and while they're much bigger systems, Montreal non-COVID times, 4, 5, 6, I'll say 5-minute plus delays a day, right? And that's not a faulty system. It's just it's public transit. There's a lot of vehicles, a lot of people. As I said, medical emergencies or door issues or fire alarms, like all those things can happen and can impact service. One of our challenges has been that we're 12 and a half kilometers. So when you have a longer line, you can I don't know, I'm doing this with my hands a lot. If you have a longer line, you can spread it out more, right? The impact potentially. So when it's a really short line, you have little place to be able to maneuver, whether to be hold a train or park a train off to the side, those types of things. So as our line grows, we have more flexibility, but obviously more pressure in terms of more customers, more trains, that sort of thing. So, but no, we've seen a huge improvement, and I get that. After the first couple of weeks of launch, it was a tough go for our staff, for our customers, and everyone's got that in their head still. Hey, that was a really rough time, and it was. But we worked through the issues, and we've I think 8 or 9 months now where we're at 98, 99% service reliability, which is fantastic. And I know some customers will say, and some people will say, yeah, but there's no riders out there. But if you look at the issues that we were experiencing when we had high ridership, only one of the major issues was really related to volume, and that was the doors, right? Catenary system, not dependent on ridership. Track, not dependent on ridership. Power units on trains, not related to ridership. So, it's not a fluke. There's been a lot of time and effort on RTG to address the issues that have been affecting service. And, our staff have gotten really, really good at keeping service going and mitigating when there are those daily issues, and there will be. And that I appreciate you making that point, because no system is perfect. Line 2, very successful line. Not perfect either. But looking forward to that. Looking forward to that opening up. That's going to be fantastic, seeing that go. I'll be one of the fortunate ones that was part there for the 2015 expansion, and then I'll be here for the next expansion. Well, hopefully here for the next.
So Troy Charter, thank you again for your time. Thank you for answering our questions and providing more insight into the O-Train system. Thank you, and have a good summer ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I thoroughly enjoyed it anytime, and I love the work you do. Thank you.